The morning started like any other in our upscale suburb in Redmond, Washington. The smell of expensive rain and freshly brewed Arabica filled our open-concept kitchen, a space of glass and steel that I had designed myself. My name is Julian Vane. At 38, I thought I had peaked. I was the lead architect for a firm that was currently sketching the skyline of Seattle. My wife, Chloe, was a lifestyle photographer, or so she said. In reality, she spent most of her time assisting her sister, Avery, a prank queen with 4 million subscribers and a thirst for engagement that bordered on pathological. I was sitting at the mahogany island, checking structural specs on my tablet, watching the mist roll off the evergreen trees in our backyard. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy with unspoken words. I heard them whispering in the pantry, a sharp, jagged sound that didn't fit the morning's calm. Chloe usually laughed with her whole body, a warm sound that used to make me feel at home. But this was different. This was a hissed instruction, low and urgent. I caught snippets. The gala tonight, and make sure the hidden mic is clipped to the lapel. I assumed they were planning some harmless surprise for Avery's channel, perhaps a birthday tribute or a celebratory vlog. I didn't realize they were planning the professional and personal execution of my reputation. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. I stood up to grab a refill of coffee, made my footsteps echoing on the polished concrete floors. As I passed the pantry, the whispering stopped instantly. Chloe stepped out, smoothing her silk robe, a tight, artificial smile plastered on her face. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They darted to the camera lens of the smartphone sitting on the counter. At the time, I thought she was just being her usual, social media-obsessed self. I didn't know I was looking at the woman who was about to set my entire world on fire for a handful of digital views. To understand how I fell for it, you have to understand the dynamic of our household. Avery didn't just make videos. She built alternate realities. Her entire life was a set, and everyone in her orbit was an extra. She had a team of editors in a rented studio in Bellevue, actors who were really just desperate extras from LA, one in a bottomless budget for high-end gear. For weeks, she had been complaining about stale metrics and stagnant growth. She needed something nuclear, a video so shocking it would transcend her niche and go mainstream. Chloe, my wife of 7 years, had started looking at me differently during those weeks. The affection had been replaced by a clinical curiosity, the way a scientist looks at a lab rat before an experiment. She began asking leading questions during dinner, probing about my loyalty and if I ever felt tempted by the high-profile women I worked with at the firm. I laughed it off, thinking it was just marital boredom or a touch of jealousy. I was the ultimate boring husband, reliable, high-earning, and devoted. To a content creator like Avery, boring was a sin that needed to be punished, and Chloe was her willing accomplice. They spent their afternoons huddled over Avery's laptop, plotting the loyalty test. They didn't care about the 10 years of history I had with Chloe. They didn't care about the mortgage, the shared dreams, or the dog we had adopted together. All they saw was a storyline. They hired a woman named Tasha, an aspiring actress from Portland who was willing to do anything for a credit and a paycheck. Tasha was briefed on my favorite architectural styles, my coffee order, and even my nervous habits. They were building a trap that was perfectly tailored to my personality, ensuring that when the time came, I wouldn't even see the bars of the cage until they slammed shut. Every "I love you," Chloe said during that time, felt like a hollow shell, but I was too blinded by my own devotion to hear the echo. The venue was the Skyview Ballroom in downtown Seattle, a shimmering glass box suspended 40 floors above the Puget Sound. It was the annual Build the Future Gala, the night of nights for the Pacific Northwest's elite. Every major developer, city council member, and billionaire investor was in that room. I was slated to give the keynote address regarding the new waterfront project, a multi-billion-dollar project that would have cemented my legacy. I had spent 6 months on the blueprints, pouring my soul into a design that would define Seattle for the next century. Chloe looked stunning in a backless midnight blue gown that caught the light like the ocean at night. As we rode the elevator up, she kept adjusting my tie, her fingers lingering a second too long on my collar. I thought it was a gesture of pride and affection. Looking back, I realized she was checking the placement of the pinhole camera she had meticulously sewn into my silk tie earlier that afternoon. Avery was there too, dressed in a loud neon pink outfit that clashed with the elegance of the room. She claimed she was there as my guest to document my big night, but she spent the entire time hovering near the tech booth at the back of the hall, her eyes glued to her phone, whispering into a headset. The air in the ballroom was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and catered appetizers. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I greeted the CEO of my firm, Elias Thorne. He patted me on the back, telling me the promotion to senior partner was essentially mine. Everything was perfect. The trap was set, and I walked right into the center of it. The bait was Tasha, now going by the name Sienna, an actress hired to play the role of a seductive, brilliant rival architect from a firm in San Francisco. She was the final piece of the puzzle, and she was waiting for her cue in the shadows of the private library lounge. Sienna approached me near the balcony just as the sun was setting over the Olympic Mountains. She was sharp, knowledgeable about Revit and BIM modeling. She had clearly been briefed on my professional interests by Chloe. We spoke for 15 minutes about the challenges of sustainable urban growth. It was a high-level professional conversation that I found genuinely engaging. She lured me away from the noise and the prying eyes of the ballroom under the guise of discussing a confidential partnership opportunity that her firm wanted to propose to mine. And as we stepped into the private library lounge, a room filled with leather-bound books and dim amber lighting, she tripped on the edge of a Persian rug. A full glass of Cabernet Sauvignon splashed across my crisp white dress shirt. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm such a klutz," she gasped, her voice dripping with fake concern. She grabbed a linen cloth from a side table and began scrubbing my chest with a frantic, aggressive energy that felt off. I tried to step back, laughing it off as an accident, but she moved with me, her hands slipping under my jacket and pulling me toward her. "Let me help you, Julian. You can't go on stage looking like this," she whispered. Her voice wasn't apologetic anymore. It was predatory, low, and laced with a strange urgency. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. I reached for her wrists, trying to gently but firmly stop her from unbuttoning my shirt. "Sienna, stop. It's fine. I'll just wear the jacket closed," I said, my voice rising in confusion. But as I grabbed her arms to push her away, her entire demeanor shifted. She let out a blood-curdling, theatrical scream that echoed through the quiet library. She reached up and ripped her own silk blouse, sending pearl buttons skittering across the hardwood floor like tiny glass beads. My heart hammered against my ribs as I realized I was no longer in a conversation. I was in a scene. The heavy oak doors of the library burst open with a force that made the bookshelves rattle. It wasn't security. It was Chloe. I holding her phone on a professional-grade gimbal stabilizer, her face a mask of practiced, cinematic horror. Behind her, Avery was shouting at a second camera, "We caught him! The mask falls! The ultimate betrayal on family secrets and revenge." I stood there wine-stained and frozen, my hands still hovering near Sienna's wrists where I had tried to defend myself. From the camera's angle, it looked like I was pinning her against the mahogany desk. The live stream chat on Avery's phone was moving so fast it was a blur of red and white text. Thousands of people were watching in real time. "Cancel him! Look at his face! He's a predator!" Poor Chloe. The comments were a digital lynch mob, fueled by the distorted perspective of the lens. Chloe didn't ask me for an explanation. She didn't look at the spilled wine or the ripped buttons on the floor. She simply sobbed for the camera, her mascara perfectly smeared to look like genuine grief. "Julian? After 7 years? In front of everyone?" she wailed, her voice cracking at the exact right moment for maximum emotional impact. I tried to speak, but the words died in my throat. How do you argue with a camera? How do you explain a setup to 80,000 people who have already decided you're the villain? Avery was narrating the whole thing like a sports commentator, describing my guilty expression to her audience. The prank didn't end when the camera stopped rolling. Avery didn't yell, "Gotcha!" and hug me. Instead, they turned and walked out, leaving me standing in the wreckage of my life. Within 30 minutes, the clip had been ripped and posted to every major drama alert account on the internet. By the time I walked back into the main ballroom, the silence was deafening. The career I had spent 15 years building vanished in the time it took for a video to upload. I walked through the ballroom like a ghost. People who had been laughing with me an hour ago now looked at the floor as I passed. I could see the glow of dozens of smartphones. Everyone was watching the clip. The CEO of my firm, Elias Thorne, didn't even wait for the end of the night or a formal meeting. He intercepted me at the valet stand, his face a mask of corporate coldness. "Don't come in tomorrow, Julian. Or Monday. Our PR team is already drafting the dissociation statement. Your key card is already deactivated." He didn't ask for my side. He didn't care about the truth. And in the world of high-stakes architecture, optics are everything, and I was currently radioactive. I drove away from the gala, the city lights of Seattle blurring through my tears. I couldn't go back to our house in Redmond. I knew the paparazzi, mostly teenagers with TikTok accounts and a few low-rent tabloid stringers, would already be camping out on the lawn. I checked into a grainy, anonymous motel in Tacoma, paying in cash so Avery's investigative fans couldn't track my credit card. I sat on the edge of a sagging bed that smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner, watching my life get dismantled on a 4-inch screen. Every news outlet picked it up. Local hero's secret life exposed. Seattle architect's gala scandal? They didn't even use the word prank. Avery had titled the video, "My sister's husband tried to assault my friend, live bust." It wasn't just a cheating scandal anymore. It was a criminal allegation. I realized then that they were never going to tell the truth. The lie was worth too much money in ad revenue and sponsorship deals. My wife wasn't at home crying. She was at Avery's hype house in Bellevue, popping champagne and checking the trending tab. I was a casualty of the attention economy. The first 48 hours in that Tacoma motel were a descent into a specific kind of hell. I didn't eat. I barely drank water. I just scrolled. I watched the video over and over, analyzing the angles. And I saw how Avery had edited the live stream afterward to cut out the part where Sienna had tripped. They had cleaned up the footage to make it look even more damning. I received hundreds of death threats in my DMs. My LinkedIn was a graveyard of professional bridges being burned. I reached out to Chloe dozens of times. I sent long, pleading texts. "Chloe, tell them the truth. Tell them it was a prank. I'll forgive you. Just stop this." She never replied. Instead, she posted a story of herself in a bathtub, surrounded by candles with the caption, "Taking time to heal from the trauma. Thank you for the support, fam." She was using my professional execution as a branding opportunity. The betrayal wasn't just the lie. It was the calculated coldness of her silence. I felt a darkness beginning to take hold, a sense of total hopelessness. I had lost my job, my wife, my home, and my reputation in a single evening. I looked at the ceiling of that motel room and wondered if it was even worth trying to fight back. But then a small spark of the architect in me woke up. An architect looks for the structural weakness in a building. I realized that Avery's entire empire was built on a foundation of lies, and if I could find the right stress point, I could make the whole thing come crashing down around them. I just needed one piece of real evidence. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story, and share your thoughts in the comments. I am a man of details. You have to be to ensure a 40-story building doesn't lean. I knew that every live show has a script, a run of show, and a digital trail. And I spent 4 days and nights scouring Avery's older content, looking for patterns. I found the actress, Sienna. Her real name was Tasha Miller, a struggling actress from Portland who had done 3 other loyalty test videos for different channels. She was a professional liar for hire. Then I got the break I needed. Chloe had left her old MacBook at my office months ago for me to fix a software issue. In the chaos of the gala night and my firing, it had been sitting in my cardboard box of personal belongings. I opened it in the motel room. Because it was still synced to her iCloud and our home Wi-Fi, the messages began to sync as soon as I connected it to a hotspot. I saw the group chat, It was titled Project Nuclear Julian. The messages were a roadmap of malice. Make sure Tasha wears the wire, Avery had texted. One, if we get 100,000 concurrents, the jewelry brand deal is locked. Chloe, make sure you cry on cue. We need the thumbnail to show Julian's hand on her arm. It has to look like a struggle. My hands were shaking as I recorded the screen with my phone. They hadn't just pranked me. They had conspired to commit a crime for a sponsorship deal with a mid-tier watch company. It was cold, calculated business. I wasn't her husband. I was an asset to be liquidated for clout. While I was rebuilding my life in the shadows, Chloe and Avery were drowning in the light. The lawsuit moved into the discovery phase, and my lawyer, Sarah, gained access to their full financial records. The truth was staggering. They were Instagram rich, but actual life poor. Every cent they made from the Nuclear Julian video had already been spent on the lifestyle they thought they had to project. The leased luxury SUVs, the rented hype house in Bellevue, and the thousands of dollars spent on designer clothes for haul videos. Without the ad revenue and with their major sponsors fleeing the scandal, they couldn't even afford the retainers for high-end defense attorneys. Avery had to sell her camera gear and her car just to keep the lights on. Chloe moved out of the Bellevue mansion and into a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of the city, sharing the space with Avery. They had tried to trade my life for clout, and in the end, the clout proved to be a currency that only worked when people believed the lie. Once the truth was out, they were left with a mountain of debt and a public record of their fraud. If you were in my shoes, having built a new life from the ashes of a betrayal, and you saw the people who ruined you losing everything, what would you do? Would you feel pity, or would you let the legal system finish what they started? Share your thoughts in the comments. I watched from afar as their social media presence became a desperate cycle of apology videos and rebranding attempts. None of it worked. The audience that had cheered for my downfall was now mocking their desperate attempts to stay relevant. They had built their house on the sand of public opinion, and the tide had finally come in. I eventually left the Pacific Northwest entirely. I needed a place where the rain didn't feel like it was trying to wash away a stain on my soul. I headed east, toward the rugged, honest isolation of Montana. I bought a small piece of land near the foothills of the Rockies and started a small design build firm. I worked with wood and stone now, not steel and glass. I built custom cabins for people who wanted to disappear into the woods, people who didn't care about engagement or viral trends. I lived in a small house I designed myself, tucked into a valley where the only followers I had were the elk that wandered through the yard at dawn. I met a woman named Sarah, a local veterinarian who didn't even have a social media account and thought the word viral only referred to a winter flu. We spent our evenings on the porch, talking about the land, the weather, and the stars. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't a character in someone else's narrative. I wasn't the cheating architect or the viral villain. I was just Julian. The piece of the mountains began to heal the parts of me that the internet had tried to break. I learned that my value wasn't tied to a professional title or a public reputation. It was tied to the work I did with my hands and the honesty of the people I kept around me. My firm grew slowly, through word of mouth and actual results, rather than SEO and hashtags. I was building things that were meant to last for generations, not things meant to be scrolled past in 3 seconds. 3 years after the gala, a tattered envelope arrived at my office in Montana. There was no return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was from Chloe. Inside was a 3-page letter, written on cheap notebook paper. She was working at a retail store in a mall in Spokane, living in a studio apartment. She asked for forgiveness. She claimed that she had been brainwashed by Avery's obsession with fame and didn't realize the gravity of what they were doing until it was too late. She asked if I could find it in my heart to drop the remaining civil judgments against her. She said she was struggling to buy groceries and that the legal interest was killing her. I held the letter over my stone fireplace, reading the words one last time. I didn't feel the burning anger that had consumed me in that Tacoma motel room. I didn't feel the urge to call her and scream. I just felt a profound sense of nothingness. I dropped the paper into the flames and watched it curl into black ash. Some things in life can't be fixed with a late apology. Are especially when the apology only arrives because the money ran out and the consequences finally hit home. I didn't reply. My silence wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. I had moved on to a world where her voice no longer held any power, and I intended to keep it that way. Avery tried to make a comeback channel a few years later. She titled it, My Truth, The Industry That Broke Me. She tried to play the victim, claiming she was a pioneer who had been unfairly targeted by cancel culture. It flopped spectacularly. The internet has a long memory for scammers, but it has a very short attention span for reformed villains who refuse to take actual accountability. She became a cautionary tale in digital marketing textbooks, a case study on how engagement at any cost can lead to total professional and personal bankruptcy. And I realized that my story wasn't just about a cheating prank or a bitter divorce. It was about the commodification of human emotion in the digital age. We've become a culture that eats its own for likes, a society where a man's entire life can be reduced to a 20-second clip for the entertainment of strangers. I was one of the lucky ones. I had the skills and the resources to survive the fire and rebuild. Many others are left in the ashes, their lives permanently scarred by a prank that was actually a crime. I now give occasional lectures at universities about digital ethics and the legal protections for individuals against online defamation. I use my own case as the primary example. I show them the screenshots from Chloe's MacBook, the Project Nuclear Julian messages. I want them to see the face of the people behind the fun videos. I want them to understand that there is a human being on the other side of every thumbnail. Tonight, I'm sitting on the deck of a cabin I just finished building for a family in the Bitterroot Valley. The air is salty with the scent of pine and clean from a recent storm. My life is different now, quieter, smaller, and infinitely more real. I lost a career that defined me, but I found a calling that fulfills me. I lost a wife who saw me as an asset, but I found a partner who sees me as a person. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold, I think back to that night in Seattle. I don't hate Chloe or Avery anymore. Hate is an energy that requires focus, and I'd rather spend that focus on the woman waiting for me at home and the projects I have lined up for next year. I just hope that one day they realize that the clout they chased was nothing more than smoke and mirrors, a hollow god that demanded everything and gave back nothing but debt and isolation. I survived the ultimate loyalty test, not by proving I wouldn't cheat, but by proving I could survive the people who tried to trick the world into thinking I did. The truth didn't just set me free, it gave me a brand new life that I never would have had the courage to build on my own. Sometimes, the most cruel pranks are actually the universe's way of forcing you out of a life that was never meant for you. My journey from a high-rise office in Seattle to the quiet valleys of Montana taught me that the truth is the only currency that doesn't devalue over time. I paid a heavy price for that lesson, but I paid it in full. Now, I'm living a life that belongs to me, not to a subscriber count or a viral algorithm. I am the architect of my own destiny, and this time, the foundation is made of something much stronger than fame. Thank you for walking through this dark chapter of my life with me on Family Secrets and Revenge. It wasn't easy to relive these moments, but if my story helps even one person spot the red flags of a content-obsessed partner or a manipulative family member, then sharing it was worth the pain. If you found strength, a lesson, or even just a bit of hope in my story, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support allows us to keep bringing these true stories of resilience and justice to the world. Share your overall thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Have you ever had to walk away from everything to save your soul? Thank you for watching, and stay safe in this digital world.